Good afternoon. Welcome. Thanks for joining us today for our Money Counts webinar. Today we are talking all about salary negotiation, which is a great one, right? My name is Allie Smith. I'm a specialist here at Penn State's Sokolov-Miller Family Financial and Life Skills Center. I lead the one-on-one financial coaching program here at the center, and I also host this regular webinar series where we cover a new financial literacy topic every other week. So in 2 weeks, we'll be talking about saving and investing. I do understand that's during spring break, so we might not have a huge turnout then, and that's okay. We do record all of our webinars and we post them to our YouTube channel. So if you would like to rewatch this session today or any of the other webinars we've ever done, you can find that on our YouTube. You just have to look for Financial Literacy PSU and you should be able to find us. So I've also got Nick here. He's one of our wonderful financial literacy ambassadors. He's helping out with the chat today. He'll be kind of moderating the chat and posting some helpful links and resources in there throughout the webinar. So be on the lookout for those extra tidbits of information. You might want to keep the chat open if you've got the space on your screen, just so you don't miss any of that good stuff coming through. I'll let Nick introduce himself here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nick Hotalen. I am a second-year student ambassador here at the center, and I'm a math and econ major, and I'm really excited for this presentation today. I hope you guys get something of value from it.
Awesome. Thank you, Nick. So as you have questions, you can ask them in the chat or in the Q&A. Nick and I will both be looking at the chat here today, and we'll check out the Q&A at the end. The Q&A feature does allow you to ask questions anonymously if you'd like to take advantage of that. Also, if you're attending from SMEAL's Ethical Leadership Challenge, we do have a QR code for you, and we'll share that at the end of today's webinar. All right, so with housekeeping items out of the way, before we dive into salary negotiation, I'd like to take a minute just to kind of get to know who's in the room with us today. So I'm going to share out a quick poll here. We have got 3 questions on this poll. I'm hoping to know, what is your affiliation with Penn State, if you have ever negotiated your pay before, and how salary negotiation makes you feel. You're able to, for that last question, how salary negotiation makes you feel, you're able to check multiple boxes. So if you're having multiple feelings about salary negotiation, go ahead and select them all. Looks like we've got a great turnout today. This is a great topic, right? This is one that we all need, for sure. Okay, so it looks like we have a good amount of undergraduate students and staff, and then a little bit of everyone else. So a few graduate students, a few alumni, a few faculty, and it even looks like we have a Penn State parent. So welcome, welcome. Looks like most of us have never negotiated our salary before. A smaller portion of us have, but didn't feel as confident in that conversation as we would have liked. And got a lot of feelings around salary negotiation. So the top 3, I think this is really telling. The top 3 here are uncomfortable, nervous, and anxious. And, I totally get that. I think this can be a rather uncomfortable conversation to have, but knowledge is power. And knowing, the goal today, right, is to empower you with the knowledge and skills to be able to have this conversation instead of feeling these feelings of being uncomfortable, nervous, and anxious. We really want you to get to the space where you're feeling empowered, confident, and excited to have these conversations. Okay, so I'm gonna end our poll here. Welcome, everyone, no matter where you're tuning in from. Thanks for being here. We really do hope that you get some value out of today's webinar and walk away feeling more comfortable and confident with salary negotiation. I will say, if you are someone who said that you feel nervous or, this feels scary, you are in the right place. This webinar is really meant to be a how-to guide to build your confidence and empower you to be able to negotiate effectively in the future. Okay, so let's dive in. As we're entering this conversation, I want to share a funny and quick story about the first time that I negotiated my salary. And you'll see why I put negotiating my salary in air quotes in just a minute. But I was looking for and interviewing for my first job out of college. The interview went great. And after a few rounds of interviews and follow-ups, I finally got the job offer. I was really excited because the job was what I went to school for, and it seemed like a really great fit with a good environment. So my soon-to-be boss called me up with the offer and let me know the starting salary over the phone. And in that moment, I was so excited to be getting the offer that I just gladly accepted it. Like it was my first job out of college. And he literally was like, "What? No, don't accept this. You need to negotiate. Let me talk with HR and see if I can get you a higher pay." And he did. He got me a higher pay, but why should you negotiate? Because that will likely never happen in your life, right? I got really lucky that my first boss out of college cared enough about me and the money that I was making to basically negotiate on my behalf. But don't expect that. So I think sometimes people might wonder if this is a conversation worth having at all. It can feel a bit scary, especially if it's your first time negotiating your salary. You might be tempted to just skip it altogether. Or maybe you feel like they're just going to say no, so why even bother? Let me just start by saying salary negotiation or negotiating your salary is kind of expected in most positions. I think the story that I just shared is kind of a testament to that because my boss was so surprised when I just accepted the offer and didn't negotiate at all, right? So there are many reasons to negotiate your salary, the most obvious being that if you're hoping to earn more wages or more pay than you were initially offered, salary negotiation is the way to accomplish that, right? But there are some other larger reasons why salary negotiation is important. So where you start with your salary is the biggest indicator of where you're going to end up with your salary in your career. So this is your lifetime earning potential, not just what you're making right now in this particular job, but what you make over the course of your entire career. And this what you make over the course of your entire career can be affected by this one conversation for this one particular role, right? So this is an important conversation. Your first wage can absolutely affect where you land with your salary in the next 20 to 40 years. This graph is kind of showing some of the research surrounding where you might start your first job and the difference in lifetime earning potential. Notice that someone who starts at $56,000 instead of $40,000 will make about 1.2 million more over the course of their career. That's a big number, right? And this is especially true in organizations where you might be moving to a different position within your organization. So maybe a large institution like higher education, like Penn State, for example. And this can also be true if you're changing jobs as well. Some jobs may ask about past salary, and we're going to talk about that a little later, but some jobs may and some jobs will. So there is kind of this moment of leverage when you first begin your employment history where you've got the opportunity to negotiate and bump up your lifetime earning potential. But you've also got that opportunity when you change jobs and start with a new employer, right? This moment really matters. The other reason why salary negotiation is critical is to close the gender pay gap and the pay equity gap. If you're not familiar with these terms, yep, you're looking at the right slide. We have a chat. I'm not sure if we're seeing the right slide. We're covering kind of right now the why behind negotiation. So increased lifetime earnings is that second kind of piece down there. I covered that first, so I'm a little bit jumbled up. But now we're talking about pay equity, right? So if you haven't heard of the pay equity gap, women earn 82 cents for every dollar that a man makes in this country on average. And this pay equity gap gets even larger for women of color. So Black women earn 70 cents for every dollar a man makes on average, and Hispanic women earn 65 cents for every dollar a man makes on average. So these are significant figures. Think about how these numbers add up over the course of a lifetime when we talk about lifetime earnings. So, to close this gap, we really need to empower women to negotiate and to support policies that promote equity and transparency. Today's webinar is really about the empowerment piece. So, empowering you with these skills and being sure that everyone is equipped to negotiate, right? We won't cover policy. That's a little bit outside of our scope here at the center. That's a different side of this, but it is equally as important. So we can't miss that in this conversation. But today we are going to focus on these negotiation skills. And let me just note quickly that this doesn't mean that men shouldn't negotiate their salaries or practice these skills. It just means that we need to be especially cognizant if we are managing women or we ourselves are women. The story I told earlier, I just know that my first boss was looking out and doing what he could to kind of close the gender pay gap, right? By kind of forcing me to negotiate my salary. What a guy. I'll never forget him. So this is really why salary negotiation matters, right? First, we want to be paid what we're worth. We want to work to close this pay equity gap that exists. And we know that our starting salary, whether we're starting our career right now or starting with a new employer, will absolutely affect our earnings over our lifetime. So let's move into these skills, what these skills are that we need to have to effectively negotiate. To effectively negotiate your salary, there are a few essential skills you need to have and things you'll kind of need to do to prepare. So we'll talk about how to look at market-based research on other salaries in your field. We'll talk about how to prioritize what you're negotiating for. We'll talk about knowing yourself and expressing your value effectively. And then we'll also talk about how to secure your offer and how to actually have these critical conversations. The first step in any effective salary negotiation starts well before you get in a conversation with a potential employer. In fact, I'd say this starts right when you're searching for jobs or are hearing about a job or intend to apply for a job. The first thing you should do when you're interested in a job is go and get an idea of what the market is paying for that type of job. Some of our favorite sites for doing this type of research are on the screen here. Nick just pops those in the chat if you'd like to take a look at any of those while I'm talking here. I will say salary.com and the NACE salary calculator are some of our favorite research tools here at the center. But really, these are all great resources. And for you undergraduate students that are here, if you haven't checked out the We Earn PSU tool, I highly encourage you to do that. This can really help to give you an idea of what you might expect to make after graduation based on your field of study. This is a more broad tool, so it's not going to give you an exact range or an exact amount that you can expect for your salary like some of these other tools will, but I think the We Earn calculator is a great tool for like current students to kind of see like, what can I expect when I graduate? Anyway, within most of these tools here, we can filter and adjust for things like location, your education, and your experience, which is really helpful to give more accurate ranges based on you and your unique circumstance. Location is one of the more important factors to filter for, I think, because the cost of living can vary wildly depending on where you go. So what you'll want to do then when you use one of these tools is to search for the job title that you're researching. and look closely at the job descriptions listed within these tools to try and find as best a match as you can. This is going to take some time. So once you've found that, you can filter down further to try and find an appropriate salary or salary range for the job that you're looking for. It makes sense to use multiple sources and resources to do this research and kind of keep track of what you're coming up with so you can kind of put all of that research together. And we'll talk about later how you kind of use this research. But this process really, like I just said, is going to take a little bit of time. The minute you start looking for a job is the minute that you should start preparing to negotiate your salary. And this is the first step. You want to have this research kind of in your back pocket so you can pull it out anytime that you need to. Sorry, I'm looking at the chat quickly. We do have one more resource here. It is from our center. We've just got kind of like a one-pager on some additional resources. That should be in the chat shortly. But use your resources, right? Do this research, set the time aside. This is I want to say, one of the most important pieces in this journey of preparing to negotiate your salary, and having good research in your back pocket that you're able to pull out when you need is going to boost your confidence having these conversations a lot. Okay. It'll also kind of tell you that what I'm asking for is reasonable, which might make you feel a little bit less nervous. Okay. So let's kind of pretend that we're maybe applying for a job right now. So maybe take a minute to visualize your next job or your next career move, or maybe you're a graduating senior and you're currently in the process of job searching. So go ahead and visualize that job that you're looking for. Think about the job title that you're looking at, and let's kind of move through this research process. Let's see what this could look like. So the three things that you're trying to establish with this research on market value are your target salary, your salary range, and your walkaway point. Your target salary is really what you are hoping to earn. You're trying to set some kind of anchor on what it is that you believe you are worth in this position. When you're doing your research, you'll likely see some median salary data, and you might consider setting your target salary at or near that median. Your salary range helps you understand where you might fall based on your target salary. So your target salary will be the anchor at the bottom of this range. So what you'll do then is calculate 10 to 20% higher than your target salary, and this is going to be the upper number in your range. If you are young in your professional career, maybe you are a graduating senior searching for your first job out of college, you might use 10 to 15% rather than 20%. But if you are, fully in your career, you can use that 20% figure. So this is your salary range, right? Target salary is the bottom number of your range, which might be close to a median that you would find when you're doing your research. And then the top number in your range is what you're calculating here with that 10 to 20% higher. You also want to know going in what your walkaway point is. Your walkaway point is the point at which below you would not take the job. This is an incredibly important number because I think in our mind, as we go to apply for a job, we can pretty easily think about the walkaway point, like, oh, I don't think I would do this job for less than this. But at some point during the interview process, maybe we get charmed, or maybe we get convinced into believing that we might take this job for a value that's lower than what we would have established at the beginning. You should also consider with this walkaway point your budget and your financial obligations. And knowing this number before you step foot into an interview is really important. So maybe you even write this number down and underline it a few times to reiterate to yourself, I will not do this job for less than this amount. So these are the three numbers. let's take a look at these three things in action. So we've got our target salary, our salary range, and our walkaway point. If you use a tool like salary.com or the NACE salary calculator, you might end up seeing a graph that looks something like this. So this is going to show you the range for market value in this position. So to be clear, this is not your range. Like we haven't done any research yet, or well, I guess this is the research that we're finding out, right? But we haven't plugged your numbers into this. So as you do the research, you'll see something like this. This should show you some kind of midpoint. So on this example, our midpoint is about 89,000. The midpoint range, which we see here, we've got 67,370 to $116,220. And then we also have a low end range and a high end range. So on our low end range, only 1 in 4 people are paid less than this. And in our high end range, only 1 in 4 people are paid more than this. So your job, once you find this information, is to kind of place your metrics on top of this. Employers are hopefully trying to be competitive with offers and are trying to get close to that median number. But that's not always the case, right? So that's why we're learning about salary negotiation, and that's why it's important to do our own research to see like what is an appropriate salary for this job that I'm going to be doing. So let's say this is you, right? The job that you're looking at, the median is about $89,000. But maybe you are entry level or rather new at this work. You're still qualified for the job, but based on your experience, you're willing to go a bit lower than the median. So maybe here is where you place your target salary, somewhere in the high 70s or the low 80s. From there, we can get that range set up. So you'd calculate 10 to 20% higher than your target salary, and then there's your range. Again, you typically don't want to go any more than 20% higher, and you might be closer to 10 to 15% if you're more entry level. And then you can plug in your walkaway point. So this number is really up to you, right? You can definitely calculate this based on the cost of living, your budgeting needs, like what you know that you need to have to be comfortable in your life and your lifestyle. So thinking about this, what are some indicators that this maybe is not a good job to be applying for? When you're doing the research, you're laying down your numbers, you might see some indicators in some positions, right? One of those could be if you see that the average salary for the position is well under what you need to be making just based on your financial obligations. And then another would be if you see that the job has actually posted a salary range or a salary in the job description, and that is well below market value when you start to do this research. That could be an indicator that that might not be a good fit for you. And of course, it's up to you if you still want to apply for that position. But knowing that, potentially these salary expectations that you have and the employer has don't align, knowing that would be good before you spend a lengthy amount of time in interview processes, right? So you've kind of got to set these targets for yourself and do this research before you enter into the salary negotiation space. You should be really prepared with this research in your back pocket even before the first interview. So when we talk about salary negotiation, we do tend to focus on salary, but negotiating for other pieces of your employment package can be just as important as salary. Especially, recognizing that there are industries where it is really hard to negotiate salary based on really strict pay bands, for example. In situations like that, you can and should still negotiate, but you might need to negotiate for other pieces of the employment package. Listed on the screen here are some other important things to consider in your research phase, or, what you are really looking for in an employment package. Along with what you see here, I'll give you a minute to kind of digest this. But along with what you see here, flexible or remote work options are also examples of things that have become really popular to negotiate. So as you are doing your research, you're thinking about other points of negotiation, you want to write this stuff out, just like you wrote out your target salary, your range, and your walkaway point. Take some time to write out your ideal working conditions just so you go into these conversations about salary feeling really prepared and knowing what you're looking for and what you want, right? So what I want to shift to now is the skill of learning your value and understanding your value. In order to understand your true value in a position, after you've done the market research, you should really be building this kind of continuous portfolio of who you are and how you'd be valuable to an employer. This portfolio could literally be a running document that you store on your computer that contains things like reviews, letters of recommendation, rewards that you've received, reports or projects that you've worked on that you feel especially proud of, that kind of thing. This can be a running document from your entire professional career. So that when you are looking for a new position or when you get into the salary negotiation space, you have everything handy and you can kind of call on that portfolio that you already have created to support these value statements in your negotiation. If you don't have something like this, we do encourage you to work on curating it, right? So take a look at some of the past jobs that you've had and think about what you might be able to pull into your portfolio from those experiences. This is really going to look different for everyone. Some jobs are naturally a little bit easier to extract portfolio items from. For example, let's say you're a journalist and your writing experience or where you've been published might be the kind of thing that's obvious to put into your portfolio, right? But there are other jobs where you might have to get a little more creative with this. So maybe you're including things like recommendations from your boss, or maybe you received an Employee of the Month award. Maybe you've really grown the numbers in your unit or increased sales, or maybe you have really good reviews from people that you've worked directly with. So a good example for me is currently I'm the assistant director of financial counseling here at the center. And anytime I work with a student one-on-one and something really like clicks for them and they have a great experience, they learn a lot, they leave feeling really excited. We do have a survey we send out for those, and I try and collect responses from those surveys that go out. And if there's ever an especially glowing survey review, I'll call it, I just go ahead and plug that into my portfolio. That's a great example of something that you could include there and kind of collect as it presents itself. These portfolios are the foundation in which we pull from to create our value statements. Our value statements will consist of an accomplishment, a skill, and a result. So let's take a look at an example of what a value statement from one of your previous jobs could look like. Just an example, of course. So here's our value statement. In my current role as a part-time server, I increase sales by encouraging students to host fundraisers with us. Accomplishment right there. To accomplish this, I used my organizational and networking skills to create a project plan and contacted student organizations and Greek life. There's your skill, right? This is something that you are capable of doing with your unique skill set and your unique ability. And then last sentence is the result. So as a result, I was promoted to shift supervisor after 6 months and was voted Employee of the Year. That's great, right? So you can see how having a portfolio would make this exercise much easier. And you could kind of extract these facts and statements from your portfolio. So I want to encourage everyone in our audience today to go ahead and think about what your value statements could be from your last 2 jobs. So think about an accomplishment, a skill, and a result. And I'm going to kind of just pause for a moment here to give you a chance to think about this. So think about those last couple of jobs and go ahead and practice. If you need a little help, we've got a little Mad Lib here that you can kind of just like plug and play. It can really be this easy. And if you want to as well, as you're thinking about this, as you're maybe writing this down, feel free to share it in the chat if you'd like to write this out and share it with others, maybe give other people an idea of what this could look like in real life. And of course, if you'd like to remain a little more anonymous, but you still want to share, you can leave out your title, while working as blank. I'll give you a minute or so to think about this, then I'll be quiet. Okay, hopefully you're getting a chance to practice this. Excuse me, please share in the chat if you'd like to do so. Not required, of course. But even just writing this down is a good first step to practice expressing your value. But being comfortable verbalizing this will be very important in the actual salary negotiation space, right? So we do encourage you to practice. Think about any important presentation that you might have to do or conversation that you might have. You probably practice those, right? So whatever works for you typically to practice, whether it's recording yourself and reviewing it later or practicing and doing like a demo with a friend or a family member or a mentor, or even like talking to yourself in the mirror, whatever works for you usually to practice, you should also do that for these salary negotiation conversations also. We can't expect to be good at anything without practicing it. So this is especially for those of you who at the beginning indicated that you've never negotiated your salary before, like this is a completely new skill, right? And so you kind of have to expect that it's going to take a little bit of practice to get good at it. But we don't necessarily want to be practicing when we are in the interview and salary negotiation space. We want to get that practice out of the way, like beforehand, get those nerves out of the way beforehand, right? And we wouldn't just wing it for an important work or class presentation usually, right? So why would we just wing it for this important conversation with our potential employer, knowing that this conversation could potentially increase our lifetime earnings by maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars? Practice is essential. The goal really is to be honest and feel confident and comfortable having these conversations. And we do joke that these are like Mad Libs, but I really want you to recognize how simple it is to plug and play these accomplishments, skills, and results to be able to express how you add value as an individual. And I will say it is important over the course of a professional career to kind of keep track of these because we might have many jobs, right? We might forget about our individual accomplishments in each jobs, or we might lose track of reports and projects from specific jobs, for example. So let's take a look at some more examples of these value statements here. Here's an example of how your value statement can be inserted into your salary negotiation dialogue. So I'll just read this out. Listen for the value statement. I'm very excited about this opportunity. However, I'd like to talk about compensation as I believe I would be a terrific asset to the team, especially since I was able to successfully protect my company's data while we migrated from one data system to another. I used experience in cloud computing and database management to minimize security issues. Based on my experience, could we consider a salary of 70,000? So this is really clear, it's concise, it's specific. You're opening the door to have this conversation. And, we're not just saying, I did a really great job in my last role, so I'd like to be considered for a higher salary. No, you're telling them exactly what you did and you're giving a specific example. See how the value statement is kind of embedded in there. This one's pretty clear, but let's take a look at another example of maybe like doing this slightly differently. So another one, right? Thank you for meeting with me to discuss your offer. I'm really looking forward to joining the team. As you can see on my resume, I have experience managing a training program that created reduced turnover. According to my research, the typical range for someone with my qualifications in this role is 60 to 65,000. Given my existing leadership skills, I think this range would be more appropriate. So in each of these, we had our value statements embedded, right? We've got the accomplishment, we've got the skill and the result. This one's a little different. So in that first sentence, as you can see on my resume, I have experience managing a training program that created reduced turnover. We've got the accomplishment and the results in that sentence, and the last sentence has the skill there. So hopefully you have had a second or a few seconds to write out at least one of your value statements or to kind of just start to think about this. And know that these value statements are mobile, right? You are going to be kind of inserting them into these salary negotiation conversations where they're relevant. So you want to be sure that what you are sharing is relevant to the role that you're applying for, and of course, the position you're interviewing for. So you might not include information about your management style and reducing turnover at a job where you won't be managing people. So I just want to highlight that we should be really specific about the skill set that we believe that we can bring to this role. Let's look here at some do's and don'ts of salary negotiation. Okay, so do learn about the company beforehand. Remain really flexible and positive throughout the process. Remember that you are not entering into an argument or a disagreement. You're entering into a conversation, and it should feel that way. Find consensus points. Find places where you agree. Use market research. So here you're kind of making a point to say, maybe you're not making a point to say this, but you are kind of highlighting this in your conversation. Like, what I'm asking for is well within the bounds of the market research that I've done. And I have done this research, so I know what to expect here. Re-emphasize your value. This is where your value statement comes in, right? Market research alone is not good enough in a salary negotiation conversation. So explain that market research and how you're well within that range, but also demonstrate your own value with that value statement. And of course, do anticipate questions or reservations. And this is where doing research on the organization will be really critical. So you can kind of have an idea of like what you might expect there. For example, if there's pay bands available for the organization where you're applying, be sure you know what those look like. That can give you a lot of information. So as you're going into this conversation with your potential employer, you can be as informed and ready and knowledgeable as they are. Some don'ts. Don't underestimate your worth. This is why we've got this portfolio with our experience and our value statements that are locked and loaded and ready to share. Don't become emotional or get defensive. It's really important that you keep a calm, even keel throughout this conversation so that it really does feel like a conversation. And don't get too personal or overshare. I will say, like, you don't want to include in your reasons for negotiating information like, oh, you've got student loans that you need to pay off, or you've already signed a lease for an expensive apartment, so you need X salary. Like, those are not things that are appropriate to include. And like, frankly, your employer probably won't care about those things. That could almost leave like a bad taste in their mouth. So we don't want to get too personal here. We don't want to overshare. You want to state your value and leave it on the table. Of course, don't patronize the employer. You want to be respectful. Don't have an all or nothing attitude. Where can you give and take? And don't rush into the negotiation. Got a good question in the chat here. Is it too much to bring or reference positive annual reviews from your previous jobs? Absolutely not. I think that's a great thing to include. Your annual reviews from your previous jobs are something that you might want to stash in your value portfolio, right? I think that is absolutely appropriate and definitely not too much. Great question. And I'm glad you're thinking about that. Okay, so what might be some barriers that you might find and things that we want you to kind of look out for in this whole process? One of the biggest things is sometimes the salary negotiation conversation comes up prematurely. So you might have already seen job applications where they ask you to state previous salary history or, your desired salary in the actual application. I will say you want to avoid this as much as possible. In most situations, it is really ideal for the employer to offer salary first. Then you have an idea of what they're valuing you at, what they believe is competitive for the job, or at least sort of at the minimum, like what they offer, right? So it is a good idea to deflect any conversation about salary that this potential employer tries to have with you before they make you an actual offer. Or if it's possible to bypass any questions on the application where they ask you about salary expectations, totally do that. That's not always possible, right? But when you can, if you can, deflect, bypass. Here are some sentences that you could use to kind of deflect this in a dialogue. I think my favorite one here is I'd like to learn more about the role before I set my salary expectations. That's simple enough, right? Kind of rolls off the tongue. And, if you do feel uncomfortable with them asking this question before they've even made you an offer, or you feel uncomfortable potentially sharing like past salary history, just know that this is such a hot topic that several states and cities have actually adopted laws that prevent employers from requesting this information. So Nick put a link in the chat for this article. It's also right here if you'd like to take a look on your phone and just like scan the QR code. But this article will give you an idea of if you live in or are applying for a job in an area that has some of these laws in place. Okay, so let's look at how this conversation could form. How could this go? I'm going to call on Nick here. He is going to be our manager and he's going to offer me a job.
After consideration, I'd like to offer you the position and a salary of $60,000.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to receive the offer and excited about the possibility of joining the team. I'm hoping for some flexibility on the salary given my proven success increasing donor gifts by 10% in a similar role. What flexibility do you have?
We're prepared to go up to 62,000.
I appreciate that. Based on my review of similar positions in the area and my existing fundraising skills, I'm hoping to earn closer to 65,000. Would you consider this?
Let me look at those numbers and get back to you by the end of the week. How does that sound?
That sounds great. Thank you. So Nick and I deserve an Academy Award for that performance, right? But what we really want you to see here is that this can be a really cordial conversation and it should really feel like a conversation. A lot of times managers are looking for this conversation. So, my first boss and my first job is a great example of that, right? Um, and we should really consider salary negotiation as part of the overall hiring process. So, first, we go through the job search and we start applying for jobs. We go through the interview process and we get an offer. Then we do negotiations. And then, based on how those go, we either accept or decline the offer. So, just think of salary negotiation as like a step in the hiring process. If you do feel like you've been offered a fair wage, that might be the time for you to like push towards that upper limit just to see if you can get a little bit more money. But if you're really happy with the offer and it aligns with the market research that you've done, it is okay to accept it as long as you've also considered some of those other negotiating points. So, really making sure that you're happy on all fronts with the job offer. And if you're not, that is a great opportunity to negotiate something besides salary, right? Could be good practice for the future too. Even if, you get an offer that you're happy with, you could ask for a little more, practice having this conversation. They might say no, right? It might be their best right off the bat, and that's okay. But practice is good. The more we practice this conversation, the better that we're going to get at having it. And this is a common fear around salary negotiation. Like, this is a question we get a lot. What if they say no? So let's say, Nick gets back to me and says, I've talked with my manager and we've looked at the budget and we can really only offer 62,000. So what you might want to do there is kind of acknowledge that the offer is lower than you had planned, but of course, stay gracious. Maybe it's still within your range. It's not quite as low as your walk away point. And know that it is okay to delay a little bit. Ask for a day or two to think this over. So this could look like here then. I appreciate you advocating for me to get an improved offer. However, the offer is a bit lower than I was expecting. I'd like to take a day or so to think things through, then get back to you with either an acceptance or additional questions or concerns. This could also be the perfect time if they, say no. This could be the perfect time to pull out your list of non-salary negotiation points. So maybe you don't get the salary that you quite expected, but maybe you negotiate an extra work from home day a week, for example. And that'll make you a little happier in your job with all things considered. Lastly, if you're not able to negotiate your current salary, you might discuss revisiting this conversation in the future based on like meeting your work goals, or maybe you agree to a salary review after a specific period, like 6 months or a year. In those 6 months or in that year, be sure you prep those value statements in that time, right? So you're really ready to have a great conversation about salary when it comes back around. So what you could do here is really ask if there will be another time in the future that you might be able to revisit this conversation. And you could also ask if there are certain credentials that they're looking for that would help boost your salary. So this was an overview of the process, right? Some tips, some resources, but there are additional resources to help you with this. The two places that I would go if I was a student and I was looking for salary negotiation help are Penn State Career Services and our center. So at Career Services, you can get help with career planning, resume building, cover letter writing, the internship and job search, and interview prep. At our center, we can help more on the financial side of things, though I have a fun story that I'll share in just a minute. But we've got one-on-one appointments, right, where we sit down with students and talk through them about all kinds of different financial aspects. So things like job offers. How do we look at our benefits package? What does this all mean? Preparing for a negotiation, like figuring out how exactly do I do this research? What should I be looking for? Budgeting based on your salary that you've been offered, and debt repayment strategies based on that salary as well. So one thing that I've done in this role in the one-on-one space, and this is a great story that I love to share. It's been a few years, so some of the details have like escaped me at this point. But I had a one-on-one appointment with a girl who was graduating. She had studied journalism and was looking at different jobs. And she had gotten a job offer. And this was a few years ago, but like I feel like this number is still shocking. Her offer was $25,000. And so she was a little upset about that. She had taken her few days to think about it. And what we did in the time that we met was just like did the research, we practiced, we did some like role play salary negotiation practice. And it felt a little uncomfortable and weird, right? But ultimately, like it really helped her because a few months had passed and I got an email from her that had said like, Allie, thank you so much for helping me negotiate my salary. Like I was able to negotiate it to X, and I can't remember at this point what exactly that number was that she took it up to. But, you know, just knowing that she was able to do that, she felt really empowered to do that after, you know, just following the process, right? Like doing the research, figuring out her value statement and how to express that, and just practicing having these conversations. Like she was able to put that in action and really change her life for the better, get a wage that was a little bit more livable, all things considered. So we are here to help. Keep us in mind. Career Services is also here to help. This is a quick overview of our services. Some of those I just mentioned. All of our services are free and available to Penn State students. Some of our services are available to staff and faculty. I just mentioned we offer one-on-one financial coaching appointments. Students can schedule these in Starfish. We do meet with alumni as well, so alumni can email us to set up an appointment at finlit@psu.edu. And then for one-on-one coaching for faculty and staff, we work with our partners at PNC to offer that financial coaching. So again, if you email us, finlit@psu.edu, we can get you set up with someone at PNC. We offer group presentations and webinars. Those can be scheduled for classes, student organizations, and groups. We've got our self-study modules on a variety of different topics in Canvas. Those are completely open to the public, so anyone can view those. We also have a salary negotiation self-study module if you're hoping to like dig in a little further, but maybe you're not quite ready to like meet with someone and go over this. Our mentoring program provides a space for current students to connect with an alumni or someone else in the Penn State community to receive guidance on financial skills and life skills. And all of our services can be found on our website, which is financialliteracy@psu.edu. You can type that in or scan the QR code with your phone and it'll take you right there. So that is the end of today's webinar. We've got a few minutes for questions here, but I really do hope you're feeling a bit more empowered to negotiate your salary, knowing where to start, and just knowing that like practice, I think, is the only thing that's going to make you feel comfortable having this conversation, right? So you've got a good starting place, but you've got to put some work in too. We'll get to questions here.